Some people leave behind their hearts without meaning to. Others come back to find where they left them. In the quiet rhythm of Clara's diner, where the scent of cinnamon and coffee hung in the air like a warm promise, life moved at a steady, predictable pace. Each day was a familiar melody of clinking plates, murmured conversations, and the soft, comforting hum of her own voice as she worked. She moved between tables with a quiet grace, her hands dusted with flour, serving slices of pie and pouring cups of coffee. Her world was small but orderly, built on the foundations of hard work and simple pleasures. She knew every regular by name, every order by heart. Her diner wasn't just a place to eat, it was a sanctuary, a small pocket of warmth against the vast, indifferent landscape. The locals saw her as a fixture, as permanent and reliable as the sunrise. But beneath the surface of this serene routine, Clara carried a quiet ache, a story she never told, a reflection in the mirror she tried to avoid. She believed her worth was measured in the perfection of her pie crusts and the richness of her stews, because she had long ago convinced herself that was all anyone would ever see. Then, one sun-drenched afternoon, a new sound broke the familiar rhythm of her day. It wasn't the rumble of a truck or the chatter of new customers. It was the steady, earthy beat of horse hooves on the dusty road outside. The sound grew closer, a percussive announcement that something was about to change. An old farmer, a regular named Mr. Henderson, looked up from his coffee, a knowing glint in his eye. He gestured with his chin toward the window. "Looks like you got a visitor, Clara," he said, his voice a low rumble. She followed his gaze, wiping her hands on her apron. A man was dismounting from a handsome bay horse. He moved with the easy confidence of someone who spent his life under the open sky. It was Jack, the rancher from the ridge, the man who had left her diner only a week ago with a whole apple pie and a look in his eyes she couldn't quite decipher. He was back, and he was carrying a heavy burlap sack over his shoulder. Clara's heart gave a little flutter, a nervous bird trapped in her chest. She smoothed her apron, a gesture of habit, and tried to compose her features into a welcoming, professional smile. "Back so soon?" she called out as he pushed the door open, a small bell chiming his arrival. Her voice was lighter than she intended, betraying a hint of the surprise she felt. "You run out of pies already?" Jack's grin was wide and genuine, crinkling the corners of his eyes. The afternoon sun caught the dust motes dancing around him, framing him in a halo of gold. "Ran out of excuses to stay away," he answered, his voice a warm, pleasant drawl that seemed to fill the small space. He walked to the counter and gently placed the burlap sack upon it. The thud was soft, followed by the faint rolling sound of its contents. It was full of fresh-picked apples, their skins gleaming red and green. "For your next pie," he explained, his eyes locking with hers. "Thought maybe I'd earn myself another slice." A soft laugh escaped Clara's lips, a sound of genuine amusement. "Well," she said, her smile finally reaching her eyes, "I can't turn down a trade that sweet." She untied the sack and peeked inside, the crisp, sweet scent of the apples rising to meet her. It was the scent of autumn, of promise, and of a connection she was just beginning to understand. Later, the last of the lunch crowd had trickled out, leaving the diner in a state of peaceful quiet. The only sounds were the soft ticking of the wall clock and the gentle hum of the refrigerator. Clara had cut him a generous slice of the pie he'd inspired, and now they sat across from each other at the small wooden table in the corner, the very same one they had shared a week before. The afternoon light slanted through the window, painting stripes of gold across the checkered tablecloth. The warmth in the room wasn't just from the lingering heat of the ovens. It was from the unspoken current passing between them. Jack took a slow bite of pie, his eyes closing for a moment in appreciation. "Funny thing, Clara," he said, setting his fork down. "I kept thinking about what you said last time." Clara raised an eyebrow, a playful glint in her eyes as she took a sip of her coffee. "Oh, which part?" she teased. "The part about the beauty of the landscape, or the superiority of my biscuits?" He chuckled, a low, pleasant sound. A gentle smile played on his lips, but his gaze turned serious. "The part where you said no one marries a girl who can cook, but can turn heads." The playful light in Clara's eyes flickered and died. She looked down at her hands, suddenly embarrassed and exposed. That comment, tossed off in a moment of self-deprecation, had been a shield, a way to voice her deepest insecurity, without truly admitting it. She had never imagined he'd remember it, let alone bring it up. The silence stretched for a moment, thick with unspoken words. Then, Jack reached across the table, his voice softening to a near whisper. "You were wrong, Clara," he said, his tone gentle but firm. "Turns out I can't stop looking." Her head snapped up. His eyes were fixed on her, not with pity, but with an intensity and sincerity that stole her breath. It was a look that saw past the flower on her cheek and the weariness in her posture. It was a look that saw her. Her cheeks flushed a deep rose, and her heart began to hammer against her ribs. Outside, the wind picked up, humming through the eaves of the old building, like a tender, hopeful song. The afternoon bled into evening, and soon it was time for him to leave. The conversation had flowed easily after that moment of vulnerability, touching on everything from the coming harvest to their shared love for the quiet life. Now, Jack stood at the doorway, his hat held respectfully in his hands. The setting sun cast long shadows across the diner floor, and the air had grown cool. He shifted his weight, a hint of nervousness in his posture that she found endearing. "There's a community dinner this Sunday," he began, his voice a little hesitant. "Down at the Grange Hall. Music, dancing. The whole town will be there." He paused, taking a breath before meeting her gaze. "I was hoping you'd come with me." Clara's breath caught in her throat. Go with him? To a public event where everyone would see them together. The old insecurities rushed back in, a cold wave of doubt. "Me?" she asked, her voice small. "You sure you want to be seen with someone like—" He cut her off. Not with impatience, but with a gentle finality. He took a step closer, his presence filling the doorway. "I've never been sure about anything, Miss Clara," he said, his voice low and sincere, a stark contrast to her own wavering tone. His gaze was unwavering, holding hers and refusing to let her look away. There was no doubt in his eyes, only a quiet, steady conviction that seemed to calm the frantic beating of her own heart. He slowly placed his hat back on his head, tipping the brim in a gesture of old-fashioned courtesy. A slow smile spread across his face, reaching his eyes and filling them with a warm light. "You bring the pie," he said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "I'll bring the reason to smile." And with that, he turned and walked out into the twilight, leaving Clara standing in the doorway, the scent of apples and the echo of his words hanging in the air. Her hand went to her chest, feeling the rapid, joyful rhythm of her heart. A reason to smile. He had already given her one. After the sound of his horse's hooves faded into the distance, Clara slowly closed the door, leaning her back against the cool wood. The diner was silent again, but it was a different kind of silence now. It wasn't empty. It was full of possibility. Her heart was racing, a wild, exhilarating tempo she hadn't felt in years. She walked back to the counter, her movements slow and deliberate, as if in a dream. The burlap sack of apples was still there, a tangible reminder of his visit, of his invitation, of the way he looked at her. She reached out and picked one up, its skin cool and smooth against her palm. She held it close, bringing it to her chest, as if cradling a precious secret. For the first time, she wasn't afraid of the mirror. She wasn't afraid of her own reflection, of the story she thought it told. Because someone had finally seen past it. Someone had looked at her and seen not a plain baker, not just a pair of capable hands, but a woman worthy of being seen. As the first stars began to appear in the vast country sky, Clara stood alone in her quiet diner, holding the apples close, a slow, beautiful smile spreading across her face through a sheen of happy tears. She was no longer just the woman who made the pies. She was the woman who was going to the dance,